Huh. Sorry about that. Oh, we got it squared away, I think. Didn't catch that earlier that it was in the phone frame rate. Okay, so that needs to dry for a bit. It is shellac. It won't take very long to dry, but you don't want to get overly impatient with it. So we'll go on to the second piece while this one dries. Second piece we'll grab on a worm screw. Be able to turn it, sand it, but that's as far as I will be able to go on stream with that one. Because this one will actually get textured with fire. If I really think about it, think hard about it tomorrow, maybe I'll try and record that on my phone or something like that. So this side is pretty flat, as in pretty flat, not exactly flat. Right, so will mine. I'm not taking any classes either. I'm actually going to be there as a vendor. That's perfect stuff. So that will be our part of the adventure. We just haven't decided whether we're taking the camper or whether we're going to stay in a motel. And I think my vote was to stay in the motel. As I keep reminding her, it is Wisconsin. It's going to be the end of September. I think Scott even said that they could, it could be 80 degrees. It could be 20 degrees and snowing. So, it's not the place to be in a camper. This piece is a bit on the out of balance side. I'll take some off and get it balanced. This piece here is ash. Okay, knock some of this top corner off. This one will get rounded over the whole way. This will be like a, I don't know what shape you want to call it, more of a pumpkin shaped type thing. Be round from here, up and over, and this one will eventually get a lid and a finial once it has been textured with fire. So, just like before, we'll clean up this bottom. Make sure we got it in balance so we can go at a normal, relatively fast speed. Make sure we're nice and flat. nice clean cut to make sure. Most likely the little one, maybe. Let's look at the big one, bigger one. Not sure I can get the shape that I'm looking for with that big of a foot, but that's where we're going to start. So this thing is now roughly about 2.5. Be easier if it was 3. So in order not to do math, I'll move a quarter that way and a quarter that way. Somewhere up in maybe there. No, absolutely mine doesn't. Mine will probably be sitting there doing. My wife does a bunch of dot painting nowadays, so she will probably be doing a bunch of that while she's sitting there. Something like that. So that's how far the curve's going to come around. I'm kind of undecided where to go from there, but the last ones I rounded over into it. I might try and do a little bit of a return curve maybe. Kind of like that a little bit better myself, but anyway, we'll finish the foot. And we'll finish our shape around to that point, at least anyhow. And just the bit down here, a little more shear scraping. Shear cutting, it's really not scraping at this point, it's actually cutting very, very little fine shavings. I think that'll work. This one I'm actually going to have to turn it around to do the top. Should have looked at that a little harder first, I guess. Get in, if I can get in there close enough, I can. I don't try and make these into a really small hole in the middle. I don't find that to be rather overly attractive in my opinion. I'm still going to have to turn it around. In a lot of ways, that's almost going the wrong direction right there. See whether it's going to cooperate or not. It's really almost going downhill to the fibers. Also headed right for the chuck as well. At least that got us our general shape. See what it did to me on the end grain. Actually didn't do too bad. High speed and good sharp tools. Big branch going in there. That might be a bit adventuresome. The sucker has a crack too. Thank God. Has a crack right on that tenon. You cannot have that. I'm going to take that back down deeper. Eliminate that. Eliminate basically almost that whole tenon that I just put on there. Hopefully I followed that shape because I know this set of calipers is set very close to being the perfect circle. So hopefully we did that right. It's a bit too high. That could pose a similar problem when if you've ever textured anything with fire, that's liable to be rather interesting. May fail. That would be the kind of downfall there. But it's always worth a try. It's only a little piece of wood. Not like we're gonna spend hours on it. Get it to that point. Really quit touching it too because of that little branch sticking out there is rather sharp around that hole. It will stand out quite well whenever it's been textured. It will leave that crack there. If anything, it'll probably expand that crack. So, probably should be smarter than the average bear. You just grab the big chuck. The jaws is the right size. And make sure that it's not too small. Nope, but we're good. It's almost like perfect. Some days it works, some days it don't. Can't get excited, but uh, in other words, you'll be having a competition to see who's going to spend more money. Mine will not wander too far away, I don't think. So even though we're literally gonna burn this thing with a torch, it still needs to be sanded. We might not have to do quite the sanding job on it we would if we were going to put a clear finish on it, or a clear finish to start with. But if we don't, we're trying to eliminate, get rid of any of the tool, any kind of tool marks or anything like that, or torn grain, one of the above, any of the above. So I will stop at 320. I don't feel that we need to go any further than that. Then I have to flip it. I'm going to flip it around, finish up some of the top, finish up this and across the top, and then we'll go back to the other two and do a little bit of grain filling on it. This is the other problem when you get sand and nices. Thought I had the right size drill bit, but evidently I can still go another size bigger. Come out of there. This is all set to go with it. Didn't want to release, as you can tell. In the truck with the grain, best as I can. Yeah, it's with the grain. Less likely to make any kind of mark. So, just the end wrench. Doesn't take a very big wrench to get that to break free. One thing with them, you don't. Some people complain that they have trouble with them not holding the way they should, but as you can see, they hold quite well. Usually, in my case, too well. So all we'll do is clean this face up. I might try and round that a little bit more. It's a little bit of a lip there. And then the rest of it, we'll leave it fairly good size, and then we can hollow it out. Once it's burnt, I won't hollow it out before I burn it. Certainly not running real true up here. No surprise. Don't really want to booger up my worm screw hole either, because I will reuse that to do the rest of the filling part and all that on it. So I'll just make it go around the corner a little bit further than what it was and finish out in the no man's land. Not a real great curve, but we can adjust that easy enough. A little scraping action will take care of that. Left a hump is what I did. I did at one point do this actually as a demonstration, but I can do it over in my other room where I finish things. Didn't do a nice job there though. I literally took a little chunks out of there. So, rid of the chunks, and we'll just blend that corner around a bit. Something along about there. The actual lid of the rim will be in about there. So a flat there will be a good thing. A little flat. We'll just finish sanding that up. If you've never tried this thing of texturing with fire, it's actually kind of fun. At least I think it's fun. So that piece is ready to burn. Like I say, will not do that in my shop. Not in my best interest. So that will take outside tomorrow. If I'm really lucky, I probably have a 3/8 inch bolt that I can actually bolt up into there. So it gives me something to hold on to. So they get very, very hot. I mean, you are literally burning them. But it is an interesting texture. Depending on how hard my daughter works me tomorrow, as to whether I'll get to do it tomorrow. I kind of volunteered. I guess I kind of volunteered myself to help her with some yard work tomorrow morning. Last week we did live streams Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't remember whether I did Wednesday or not. Definitely Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Did an afternoon live stream. Oh, this is the one I just did. So I want the other one. I don't need to take that off the chuck just yet either. I gotta get the other one. I did one the other day. Okay. Oh, here it is. I didn't go far with it. Oh, I do need that chuck. Never mind. I need to be able to get back in there and grab my little drilled out recess. It'll make it easier. And that chuck there does not go down small enough. So the one I did earlier is pretty close to being dry. Still feels, it's not tacky, but it feels like it's sort of soft. And I found not to rush something like this because it ends up costing you dearly. Gives you aggravations. Dust and fingerprints are not really much of an enemy. A little piece of dry paper towel will take care of that. I'll have to get some fresh gloves. My tack cloth of the day, paper towel. So this one, I'm going to do a blue. Yeah, not sure whether the blue one, we'll do the, this one we'll do in purple. I like this purple. Purple is a very vibrant purple. Just a tiny bit on my finger. I'll rub it around on my finger so we don't get a big glob. And then we'll just do our little circles. And it will fill all the open pores of the grain, which is what we're after. This process, of course, does not work on something that has any kind of closed grain. The cherries, maples, things of that nature. Never really tried it on a piece of walnut. Walnut might show up some of it, but definitely like this. This is another piece of oak. Ash works really well. Ash is sort of going to become very scarce, at least in my area. The ash borers have killed pretty much all the ash trees around here. I have a fairly good stockpile in my shed, in my garage. We'll do the whole thing, the foot included, as best as we can. Hard part on one of these like this is actually to get this rim. I only really need a little bit of the rim. This one I left flat. I didn't leave a bead up there. I know you can't see what I'm doing, but I'm doing the same thing on the rim as I go around. The rim's a little messier because I can't necessarily see what I'm doing either, for the most part, except that I smeared a bunch over the edge. Not the end of the world. We're going to clean it off anyhow. as best as what we can. Another product you don't necessarily want to get on your fingers. It is a very, very vibrant, very potent kind of a dye that's in that. I'm going to run at a fairly high speed, nice light touch. All I want to do is get the excess off the surface and leave the majority of it sitting down in the grain. And sort of, some ways it actually sort of will polish it up for you as well. So I thought there was a place it didn't want to come off. So there's a little bit that's set up on me too quickly. Once again, not the end of the world. We'll get a clean bit of paper towel. This stuff is um, mineral spirit based. She's probably a smart woman who wants to go hang out with a bunch of old men. All they're going to want to talk about is wood turning. Although I shouldn't necessarily say. Uh, I take it you've never taken her to a wood turning symposium? So a little bit of mineral spirits took that off real quick and easy like because it is spirit based. And even if I was to miss something like that on this first go around, where you get too carried away with the mineral spirits and dissolve some of it that's down in the grain, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the process until you not the end of the world until you put a coat of shellac or something over top of it, which is what these will get. I'll let this sit for a while, probably till I go do the other one at least. This thing has a little bug hole right there. You could actually just sort of fill that little bug hole almost the whole way in. This stuff will dry hard once it dries. And it doesn't take super long for it to dry either. I like that. Um, yes, I will not disagree with that statement. Although mine has not really, I retired in October, and she really hasn't gotten tired of me being around. Although I still go and do some other things that she would not be going along with, partaking in. But we do almost everything together. So that filled that crack in, or the little worm hole in. The bigger the grain, the better it is in these areas, especially where it's more of a side grain. The end grain is not super outstanding, depending on the end grain. And as usual, I can make a mess with everything. So I want to get it off my fingers because it will. It's just like using the dyes. It will dye your fingers, especially if you let it dry on your fingers. So that's that one. I'll just use a paper towel rather than my hand. And we'll take this one off and we'll do the other one. I'll wait till that sets up more. This inside of the rim, because of if I'd had the shark jaws on it, would be a little bit better. But I got some globs in there, but I'm not going to mess with it right at the moment. I'm going to go ahead and do the other one. I'll set this one off to the side, let it dry for a while. Other one feels a little. We're going to do it. Generally have a tendency to leave these sit almost like overnight rather than going back after them too quick. Because see, I'm still pulling, right now I'm actually pulling a little bit of shellac off of it. So it's certainly not super hard. But it also just smoothed that whole thing up. So that might be a plus to go with it. It's not dry enough. It's soft. It's when my finger drags across it, it's too soft. Also wipe some of the shellac off up there. That's not a good idea. Or you should be patient and let it sit and dry completely. So, time is it? 7 o'clock. We got lots of time yet. Let's stick with some small guys. I still have a couple of these are little catappa blanks that came from my uncle off of his tree. I just shot with him yesterday, and I had two little ones like this and a bigger one. And I said, there you go. Pick whatever you want. Well, he just up and he's like, well, I like all three of them. I'm like, well, I guess all three of them are yours. Like, I have more of it. We'll make more. And that's what these are, is little ones. Once again, it would be more beneficial if I would be so minded to take these jaws off and put the shark jaws on. This gives me more room to work in a little bit behind it, but it will work just the same. These blocks are not cut even remotely square enough. Again, there's a square rim bowl. Although one of them I gave him was square. I'll do these for the other guys. Wonders of doing the really small ones like this is they do not take any time at all to do. As you will see pretty quickly. We want a straight edge up here though. So I know where the top of the bowl is going to be. At least close to where it's going to be. Catalpa is actually a kind of a funny wood to work with, especially when you go sanding it. The bigger bowl that I did that I gave him was about, I don't know, maybe 9 inches across, something like that, 8, 9, somewhere in that range. I don't sand very much at all, hand sanding wise. Now these little ones I have to. I sanded the inside of that bowl. Wasn't quite big enough to do it with a 3-inch pad. I did it with a 2-inch pad. And this stuff has such soft it's so soft in the coarse grain part of it that it really sort of dug into the soft grain part, which did not give me the, gave it a texture. It's kind of a weird texture to go with it. That's literally what it did was, as you were sanding, it was sanding more of the soft grain, soft, big, coarse grain in between and leaving the hard grain behind. And it was really evident closer to the center. But he liked it, so that's all that counts. First order of business, get the tenant established. We need to know where we're going from. Simple little straight in foot. Clean, crisp corner in there now. Back to the bowl gouge to finish the outside. And we will leave a bead on this one. So go under it first and sort of straighten it out. Simple drop of the handle. I'm using the bottom part of the wing to literally come up around the corner. Do the same thing on the top side, which generally will leave me a sort of a point in the very center of the bead, which is okay. Sands it around. We'll finish the other half of that bead once we get to the inside. To rest up a bit. And that's kind of a hump in there, but back to our trusty scraper to get in this corner. And come around the corner, which will not be very clean, most likely. Softer the wood, the less it likes to be scraped. Let's stop and take a look at it once. It didn't feel like it was, oh yeah, it is. It tears it up. It'll tear it up in two places on the outside of the end grain. So you almost have to go back and do a little shear scraping with it. Just to blend everything together. Still not super clean there. I'm going to work a little bit harder on that. Feels like it got it. Don't need to get super carried away with these because it's, like I say, this stuff is so soft. We need to do the foot though. They sand like butter. Just a simple, I kind of like the simple detail on the bottom. I look at it this way, it suits Richard Raff, and he's been doing it almost longer than I've been alive, so it works for him, sort of works for me. Could put some little beads or something in there too. I just don't necessarily find that's a necessity. It will go in reverse as normal. Speed is too fast. Some, see whether we got rid of any of this. Stuff gets some weird markings in it. They almost remind you of little teeny tiny little cracks. And maybe they are. They're also something you can't really even get rid of. Back to the forward speed and try and go the opposite direction on them. See if they'll stand up and get sanded on in that direction. Also feel a lump. That's nice. Missed a flat spot. Two of them. Let's address that one and turn it around. Those little whatever they are still there. They're just gonna have to stay there. We'll address that little misstep of where that little flat spots are up there. Might as well wait till I get it turned around and we'll address that. We will sand the bottom complete, everything complete up to that bead. Much easier time to do it now than it is to do it later. So generally when I sand like this by hand, I will go the whole way to 600. Even though you probably really wouldn't have to, but has a tendency to leave some of those radial scratches in there. You can't see them. There's these tiny little, I don't even know what I would call them, like little fissures in there, and it's in the harder part of the grain, so it is kind of an oddity, so to speak. But outside of one done, we will just take and the other one on. It's definitely not a real square block, but it doesn't truly have to be square. To leave it as a sort of rectangular piece, and it is only a little offcut block, so if you don't get the end result out of it, then kind of so be it in a way. I will give this a considerable amount more speed because eventually we're going to get out here and cut on these square bits. For right now, I'll just clean up this bottom so I can establish where my tenant's going to be. You have to pay attention to where your left hand is at. It's got to stay on your side of the tool rest at all times. Otherwise, you might be saying a few four-letter words and probably going for some band-aid hits on a short. So there's our tenant. Also, in one of these places that I do not move that tool rest at all. When the piece is running, you cannot see these outside corners at all. This will be a outward flowing or opposite opposite curve of a normal ball. Just I'm not really going to try and get the whole way to the rim. I don't want to go the whole way to the rim. I want to leave probably at least 3/8 of an inch up there because this space is not exactly super well milled stuff. You can see right there's 3/4, 3/4. We drop down to about 5/8 on the other two corners. I'm genuinely just trying to continue my same curve. At least that's how I do them. You know, other people do them in other ways. Tenant needs to be established. This is also one, if you wanted to, you could take that tenant off when you were done, which is really not a bad idea with these. Just stopping to see what it looks like. Foot could be a shade bit smaller than what it is. There's some more of them little fissures in between the soft and the hard grain. Has a little bit of figure to it though. It's kind of surprising. I haven't really seen anything with any of these with any real figure to them. Make sure we got enough. Still got a half an inch, half an inch. Further up I've came, now these corners have actually got to be closer together. I just kind of lost my curve a bit on that one. And off of the end, I think we're going to leave that foot the way it is. So what I will do with it is give it a little undercut and sort of make it into a bit of a bead, although that doesn't look like a very good bead. Probably shouldn't do that with this stuff. This stuff does not want to hold a clean, crisp edge in anything, any of that stuff. And I definitely don't like that rib there. So we might I think we'll just plan on removing that because it wants to tear up to do that. Normally, when you go in there and drop the handle and come out on something hard, it'll cut it very cleanly, where this stuff does not cut it cleanly. So I think we'll just plan on removing that foot when we're done. So we're a little better than 3/8 of an inch up there. It should be enough. Should be good enough. And of course, like everything else, we've got to sand it. This will get power sanded. Not to say that you can't. If I had some sort of a pad, I don't think I would necessarily want to do it just with my fingers. Could be hazardous with some fingers. It definitely would force you to have a very light touch. Otherwise, your fingers will get smacked. I'll just elect to do it with I'll still do it with a softer pad. Or should I? I should not. It'll leave ripples if if I use a soft pad on it. So I'll use a hard pad, harder pad. And then we'll go from there. And we should be able to start fairly high on the grit. Should be. It shouldn't take a lot. I'll slow the speed down some. Nowhere near as slow as what I would sand normally. This pad is getting worn out. Wants to release from the Velcro. Nice light touch on the wings. It actually does it pretty quick and easy. Since we didn't really have any torn grain or anything like that, so it's generally pretty quick to do them. Using the harder pad on that should leave me a nice smooth surface and not be removing the soft bits in there in between them. At least that's the hope and plan. Whether it works or not, that's another story. That's our outside finished. Once again, there's a little, I don't know what they are. Wish I knew. They're like little, like little bits of stuff that's pulled out of there. And there's another streak of them. Hopefully we didn't make that tenon too small on that one. With playing around trying to make it into a bead, but we'll find out. If we did, we'll just go back to the small or the other chuck, and we're going to remove it anyhow. So I'm not really concerned if I have to go back and put giant size chuck marks on it. Be nice if we didn't have to, but let's see where it's at. It's going to be very. Oh no, okay, we're good. So once again, if we decided after the fact that we wanted to leave that little beaded foot down there, which I don't think I will, but we could still do that at this point. Don't need the dust collector. Too noisy. It's not super noisy, but I know it interferes with the mic. So I actually have a gouge that I haven't used yet. I'll start with the one that's has been used a little bit. And what we're going to do is try and follow this outside shape to the inside shape. This will go down outside edges of this, as you'll see. We'll take that down to about 1/4 of an inch. Speed is definitely our friend in this situation. And it is only a little itty bitty bowl anyhow. And we definitely need to go down in little stages, because we got to have support out here on these wings. And we will stop quite often on the wings anyhow. So there's that's about where I left the other one. Maybe a little bit thinner. I'll drop it down a little bit so we have a little bit more room to move out there. Make sure we'll go to a fresh sharp gouge. Same bevel. And I'm literally leaning, something you can't see, I'm literally leaning out over this piece so I can look down through the airspace in between. So now we're down to probably 3/16, something like that. I'm happy with that. Although, this would actually be a good piece. Probably would be a very good piece to try and do a little piercing out there on those wings. And 3/16, that's a little bit, it'll be a little heavy. See whether it'll let me cut out here and again. I did. So now we're under 1/8 of an inch. They're very flexible. So I think I could pierce that. Since that seems to be something that everybody seems to have an interest with, well, at least on the Wednesday night group. And I do have the equipment to do it, so kind of have to keep in mind though we're not going to leave a foot, so make sure I don't go too deep. Now we'll give it the trusty digital calipers and see where we're at. Hump right there, that's not good. So I gotta come back up into there. It's not a real good scenario. It does thicken up as it went. Where this hump's at, it's sort of thicker a little bit there. So I think I can see where it should be. It will be very boisterous too. It does not like that, for sure. Also would teach you, it would teach you one other thing, doing such a thing as that. Not, and it's also not a place that I would even be remotely willing to try and take a scraper to. Just have to be nice, gentle. Everybody always worries about, you start playing around doing some of this stuff, worrying about going through it or the thing exploding or what have you. But it's not very exciting when they do. It's more irritating. I got rid of the hump though. That's what I was after. They just they just sort of literally disappear. It's not like it's a big chunk of wood, so inside done. Now the hard part. The hard part is actually sanding the inside. If you didn't know where I was sort of going with that, some of this, a fair amount of this probably will get sanded without it spinning. I mean, it can still spin and you can still go out on them wings. But if you have any little oopses, then you sort of wasted some time. And dust collector would be good. What I'm really after is just these points. Because there is some tool marks out there. need to get rid of. I think we're going to switch pads because I'm not going to be able to turn that radius on the inside with that pad. Let's switch over to one that's sort of round. It's sort of rounded over. Actually, has brand new Velcro on it because I have a tendency to push a little too hard on some arms sometimes. So it sort of melded the glue. In theory, we should be able to go the whole way out. Just have to be very, very gentle on the outskirts. As in the sandpaper is just literally skipping across those edges. That works. The other thing with something like this is I started off with, I said we were down to about an eighth. As we sand, we're actually going to get even thinner than that. That should be, that should be it. Yep. So that's through 400. Now the way I sand these flat areas, so to speak, out here, is I will use a block sander to sand them. Really take the time to rate which grit I put on which, because they're 150 and 220. So I just take, this way I cover the whole area at one shot. And in this case, we're sanding across with the grain on that one. End grain's a little bit more difficult to sand. But it still doesn't take much because you're not sanding much of an area on any of them. So I'm assuming that was the 180. This is 220. I left a little kind of a round disc kind of thing in there because I'm sanding those wings. That's where the other end of the disc is heading. Not the end of the world again by any means, because this will get to round it over a bit. Right now we have razor blades sticking up. So this stuff's super soft. We'll just go right to 600, and we'll knock these corners, knock the sharp corners off. Really pretty quick and easy because it is so soft. The inside and outside, same way. Especially the inside of these gets really sharp. Outside not so bad, but the inside is like a little razor blade. And it's a sort of a jagged razor blade. And that will hide that little thing that there's a little dip in there to go with it, sort of. Last but not least is to take the super sharp corners off. And I guess if one was so minded, let's see something. I really should have something to go by in here if I'm going to I'm only going to pierce out on these upper parts of these wings. So I'm thinking if I take my trusty little pencil, just going to hold it there for the second and see, yeah, it drops off the outside edge. This is where when you don't start with a true rectangle or true square, things do not quite go as planned. So I can't go the whole way out there, so let's just call somewhere like in here. Put a little line in there, and we'll say that's going to be the inside line. The farthest in will go with our piercing. Did that very lightly. That'll sand back off easy enough after the fact. Okay, that'll work. Another project we're not going to finish tonight because I am not dragging. I have to hunt that stuff up. What I use to pierce to do something like that, I have an air-driven micro carver. They only take the real little bits. Um, Sounds very much like you're at the dentist and they're drilling on your teeth because it really is almost the same thing. It's just not angled. It has a straight shaft on it. But it is literally the same thing. The bits would actually work the same. Really almost the same bits that a dentist would use. I talked to my dentist and he's like, well, yeah, you want some? I can get them for you. You know, I couldn't get them from him any cheaper than I could anywhere else. They're not super expensive. At least they didn't used to be. Put it that way. They were like $7 a piece or something like that. They're a solid carbide. The tool itself runs at 400,000 RPMs versus a lot of people are trying to do this with the Dremels and things of that nature, and they just don't. They're not getting the results that they would like to get, and that, in my opinion, that's generally why they're not getting the results they want. Because those motors, the Dremel or even the Fordham, they do not turn at that kind of speed. So let's flatten this out. We gotta do a little bit something more with this bead. Because there's a flat in the middle of it. I guess first order business. Back to spindle gouge. I'm just going to go across the center. Still there. Bead's going to shrink down tremendously at this rate. But using the spindle gouge in that situation allows me to get into that corner down here where the bowl gouge would not. Not necessarily giving me quite the surface that I would like. Just bring the other side down to it. Sort of bead looking. Gonna take a bit more sanding than what I'd like, but it's gonna work. I also dug in a little bit and gave it a little groove back there. I'll just give it a little bit of, not necessarily something I should have done, but it will give it a little bit of a highlight up there. Actually, when it comes down to that, I probably should have made that groove a little bit wider than that if that's what I'm going to do with it, and that is what we're going to leave it as. It just kind of sinks it down in there, kind of like separated the bowl from the bead. If that makes sense. At least it made sense when I said it, so we'll live with that. Now we'll just hollow this little thing out. When you get to be this small, you could actually almost remove all the entire center of it because they're so small. Have to keep in mind it's a bead, but I gotta be looking and leaning over. I'm literally right beside the camera here because I need to be in line with that where the bowl is at underneath. Kind of like blind turning in a way. And while we're here, we'll finish that bead on the inside. A little bit. Now we can finish hollowing it out. Should stop and take a look. Looks like I got a line in there. No, maybe not. Not very thick, which is fine. It shouldn't be very thick. It's a little bowl. What I could have had is a little light in there. Would help me a bit. Yeah, now I can see where that, having trouble seeing that ridge in there. So now I can see it plain as day. So I can pick up behind the ridge, through the ridge, a little deeper. Bring around the corner to give me some room. You know, it's a little, once we keep the chips in there where it belongs. So that's down to probably about a quarter of an inch down through there. We'll just finish out the bottom. I've been doing way too many of these little bowls. It was kind of somebody had given me, I have a bunch of them that were walnut that I just did. Actually, I think I did some of them last week on a live stream. Like I said, they're very quick to do. It was a little log. The log was only probably 5 inches in diameter or so. The problem with the little ones is to actually get a nice curve in them. It's nice wall thickness down halfway, and then I'm thickening up towards the center, going towards the center. Also could, and we might do that if we're not happy with what we got, which we're not. Switch over to the one that's 65 degrees. It'll allow me to make that tighter radius in there a little easier. Also has a very less than 1/8 of an inch of bevel, cutting bevel. If that don't work, we can always go to the trusty scraper. I think that'll work. Not perfect, but only other alternative is actually to go in there with the scraper, and this stuff does not overly cooperate with the scraper. There's nothing wrong with that being a little thicker in the bottom on something like this. It'll just make it sit a little nicer. Little, I don't know what you want to call it, the ladies' rings, earrings, whatever. They can put that on their dresser and sit it there and put their stuff in it. At least that's my thought. And once again, we're back to our favorite pastime. This time we will, I don't know, might look. I got to do this rim with sandpaper. Anyway, I look at it. Sheet sandpaper, rather. Get this bead rounded over what I want it to be. Down into that groove. Make sure I get the little groove up here, which is a little bit more troublesome to get into. Cut edge of the sandpaper will allow me to get in that corner. And I'm sort of sanding both sides of it at one time. This is always a plus. So that's the rim part done okay. I might just try it with regular sheet sandpaper on the inside as well. So it would be much easier to do it with power. Well, it seems like it's getting it all right. Usually the trouble is getting across that center point very well, at least for me to do it this way. I say they don't take very long. Kind of a good thing they don't take very long because the way I price things, these only work out to be like an $8 or $9 piece. So we certainly don't want to spend an hour or something like that on one. Yeah, so I figured it's going to be little places out here that's not cooperating. We'll always spin it in reverse and see if we can get them to stand back up the other way. 320 is not enough. The line is still there. How did I miss that? It's like starting your sanding process all over. Still a little hint with it, that's for sure. And that's right on that lovely part of the end grain that comes around. That's always going to be your problem child. Maybe I can remove it by hand. Probably quicker and easier than I can while it's spinning. Because it would show up in the end finishing part of it. Unless I put something on that's non-shiny. Which I could always do that part. I could always be a cheater and do that. We'll see. 220, go back and forward rather than reverse. Or sanding is always the less desirable thing. And that's got it. One more, let's go to 600. Go in reverse. Okay, that's got it good enough. Clean off the dirt, dust, because there's a ton of dust and debris stays in this stuff here. It's such an poured grain, open grain that it sticks, seems to want to stay in there forever. Sanding it by hand like that, I don't have. There's still ripples going across the hard and soft parts. Nowhere near the amount that I had whenever I was power sanding them. So that's kind of a plus in a way. Think this one here though. I'm gonna, since it's not totally sanded the way I'd like it to be. You know, I'm being fussy for something that's this small. I'm gonna go over here in the other room and get some. I have some stuff that I bought that I use in my classes for some of the stuff, which is a beeswax and tung oil, pure tung oil and beeswax, made by the Real Milk Paint Company. It did a nice job on some of the stuff for the classes. And this is this would be an actual food safe kind of a finish because it is all cured. Of course, they even say it on their non-toxic food contact safe. It's really very simple to use. And in this wood turning world with this stuff, we don't need it. That's too much. Don't need much. We're going to rub it in, rub it on, rub it in. In all reality, if you wanted to, you could just do it this way, period. If you were doing something that you needed a food safe finish on it, you could literally wipe this on and come back a little bit later or what have you, and wipe it back off, wipe off the excess. I thought I was going to sneeze. I was going to sneeze. But us wood turners are a breed that doesn't like to wait too much on things. And that's what I said to the representative, or actually I think he was the owner of the company, that was there at the symposium I was at that I bought this at. And I'm like, well, I don't have, because he said it would take like 7 days for it to cure. And I'm like, well, told him what I wanted it for and what I would probably use it for. He's like, oh, that's no big deal. He said, just take and do just what I'm doing with it right now. That's the dirty part of that pad. Just gonna get a clean one. Sort of heat it up and rub it in. It'll melt the wax in and also create enough heat to make the tung oil set up and cure. It's not going to be a super shiny finish. It's more of a matte type finish. But it is nice, it creates a nice silky smooth finish. It's actually even warm to the touch right there for my fingers. We can go over it, and that's one of the things he told me about. He said, you should just, put it on. There's nothing says that you can't go back and put multiple coats of it on to go with it. Actually, the second, it's actually warm enough on the inside there. They've created enough friction on there that it literally has melted that wax in there that's inside the bowl right now. So I use the one that has a lot on it, or still has plenty on it first. And when they're melt that in. And it's actually, I'm putting enough pressure on and creating enough friction in there. It's actually getting warm to my fingers. So that's making it do its thing of set up and cure. You want to get all the excess off and finish polishing it up. This catalpa, even with the the normal 3408 finish that I would put on something like this stuff just it's so soft, I guess, that it just didn't give me quite the shine that I would normally get out of things. But like I say, this is what you call super simple and easy. We'll flip it around here in a minute and we'll do the outside the same way. Outside might be a little bit more challenging to do. Should have thought of that when I had the outside in good access, but so that gives it this nice warm color. It's nice and silky smooth. So it's really kind of a nice simple kind of a product to use. Also is going to hide should hide some of the places that maybe you didn't get sanded as well as what you could have or should have. Less shine, the less noticeable they are. So looks like we're going to have a tiny bit of sanding to do on that foot. Planet size was just a shade on the bigger side. It left little, you won't be able to see them. There's tiny little triangles there. There'll be 4 of them. So we'll need to get this as close to centered up as what we can. And then we will take and sand that last little bit right there. And then we'll be good to finish off the bottom. I also have a piece that goes over the live center. It's just a little wooden block, but it also has a piece of leather attached to it. So it doesn't mar the wood. And I have a circle in here to go by. So about as close as I normally get. Could be a little closer maybe. I'll probably get further off than what I was. Yeah, that'll be good. We're only going to sand with hand sandpaper in there. We're not going to go back very far in sandpaper, grits wise. I only went back to 320. Slow it down a little bit, it'll sand a little better. All I'm trying to do is remove those little lumps sticking up So as they come around, that will be the first thing that gets sanded anyhow, because they're sticking up. Still just a shade of one left. Otherwise, you'd have to recut it. I don't necessarily want to go to that extent. Where am I from? I'm from central Pennsylvania. I'm about, depending on where you live at, and because if I remember correctly, you live in Frederick, Maryland. I'm actually in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, which is about 60 miles, maybe, something like that, away from Frederick, depending on where in Frederick you would be. So there we go. Sand it off. We'll go back to the same thing. We'll finish the outside the same way we did the inside. Smear it on. Give it a little loving into it. Not worried about getting the very bottom because it still needs to be signed in that. That last little bit I'll do without it spinning or anything. Give it a tiny bit of time to soak in. Give me a chance to fold this paper towel back over in the other direction. And we'll just meld it into it. This doesn't show as much, quite as much as far as the melding goes, especially on this kind of a type of wood. But like when I do this, the people that take classes with me at Woodcraft, we finish the outside of a bowl or something like that with the beeswax. Horseheads, New York. Okay. Can't say that I've ever heard of that one. How about a big city close to that? Or bigger city that some of us might recognize? In this fashion, I can't put quite the amount of pressure on that I would be able to. Okay, I'll buy that. You see Al every Wednesday night too. Generally speaking, I am there. I know every once in a while I'll do something in the show and tell, but so I'll put a lighter second coat on it. In reality, if you were more patient, you'd let this sort of soak in a little bit, but we know as woodturners, we're not very patient kind of people. That will be one of the interesting parts of Level Up is to get to meet some of these people in person. It's always fun to meet the people that you might see on some sort of other platform. And when I was down at, my wife and I went to the Tennessee Symposium last year. Actually, last 2 years we went to it. This past year, I got to meet the tiny Turner from over in the UK. And the only time you ever really see her is on some sort of a YouTube video or something like that. And I actually, if you went back on the Facebook group, I actually saw her the morning I was leaving. She was leaving as well. And I asked her, I'm like, would you mind if we took a picture together? And she's like, oh no, of course. She's a very pleasant young lady. But I mean, I'm 6 feet tall, and I don't think she even come up to my shoulder. There you go. Little itty bitty, complete. Needs signed, and we'll just dress up that little bit on the bottom. Nice, and it is a nice silky smooth finish as far as that goes. I think I could. I didn't try that yet. It's really the first I've used it on anything on my own. Um, Probably in a day or two, or a couple of days or whatever. I think I could probably go back and buff on some carnauba wax over top of it, or could even possibly do it the same way we just did and make it shine a little bit. But it's a little bit dull in some ways, more so than what I'm used to, but it does work. Simple little catalpa bowl. Probably weighs in at about probably 3 ounces would be lucky. This stuff is super light to start with. It does have a little bit of, I twink it around. It does have a little bit of figure going across it for some reason, but make a nice little ring bowl or whatever. Kind of fun to do. They're actually almost, in some ways, they're actually challenging to do because they're so small. It's a little bit, to me, I would say it's a little bit harder to get a nice consistent shape on them, or a nice pleasing curve to the outside. Of course, the inside matches the outside, but it's a lot smaller of an area to work with. So I think it's sort of I would call it a sort of a skill builder kind of a project. And it's certainly little scraps off of the end of a log or something like that. Maybe you had a bowl that was, or a log or something like that, that you had little leftover bits that were only that 4 inches in diameter, and cut them down to 2 and a quarter thickness, and just have fun with them. That's the way I look at it. Something useful, semi-useful anyhow. So other than that, that's pretty much going to be a wrap for me tonight. So we did our purple slurp. That's actually dry. If my airbrush was cooperating, I would probably, from here, this is the one that I did first off with the purple fill in it. From here, this will get another coat of shellac over top of it to seal all this grain fill in. And then I use a water-based lacquer as my final finish on this. And this will get the one coat of shellac and probably just generally 2 coats of lacquer over top of that. Because in all reality, there's already going to be 2 coats of shellac and then 2 coats of lacquer. So that's basically 4 coats of finish on something like that. And I will do all that before I take the inside of it out. Because the inside of this most likely will not get done. Although it could. You could do the inside with lacquer too. I normally don't though. I have to clean up this outside edge up here first, but I can do that tomorrow before I put a coat of shellac over top of that. Once I put the shellac on and that dries for an hour or two, then I will take the middle out of it, somewhere thereabouts. Yep. Alrighty. Anybody have any questions, comments? If you didn't already, would be so kind as to hit the subscribe button on YouTube. That would be a wonderful thing for me. Otherwise, who knows? I might be game to do some more of this live stream during the week. Last week I did them around 4 or 5 o'clock Eastern time during the week. So till then, everybody have a wonderful evening and stay safe in your shops. And we'll see you next time.